Hello, hello. My name is Kim. I'm the Content Marketing Specialist for Co-Founder. Today we speak to Ian Shapland, who is an approved advisor. He has over 30 years experience in marketing, business development and consultancy efforts, and has done this across veterinary, medical, dental and pharmaceutical industries. Today's conversation is all about, of course, the cost of living crisis and how we can balance our budgets, look at our critical marketing efforts and make sure those do not take a backseat. Because of course, it's when you think about marketing and advertising, the first connotation and impression you get is that equals splashing out thousands of dollars and making a huge impact. But actually, this chat that I have with Ian gives us a lot of wisdom about being thoughtful and not necessarily having to have a big or huge investment in marketing from a monetary side, but from an effort side, that's definitely still the case. And what's interesting is that he talks about things like how we can use the cost of living crisis to reset and refresh our brand identity, look at our brand equity, use the voice of customer, think about things like community marketing, how you can build trust and create the relationships with not just your clients and customers, but people in general in the community. And those things can affect your acquisition efforts, for example. So when it comes to recruitment, your brand and identity is absolutely critical. But I don't want to give away too much at this stage. So let's dive in and speak to Ian. Hi, Ian. How are you doing?
I'm well, Kim. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here on tonight.
Good. Yeah, so it's a good welcome to the Pause, Rewind and Play podcast. You are a co-founder of VetDigital.
Yeah.
Tell me more about your story. Give me a background.
Background is, by the accent, I grew up in the UK, came to Australia some 30 odd years ago, and since then have been involved with basically health professionals across many areas, from the retail side of pharmacy, doctors, medical, dentists, and indeed the last 12 years or so going across all veterinary areas. But it's essentially been really across working with essentially those health professionals in their own small businesses and helping them make the most of what they have, or indeed growing a business. And about 18 months ago, when Blair and I started the company VetDigital, and we've both come from like a business consulting background, so we're building this in relation to more a communication and engaging with your client base sort of company. So that's really where our source comes from, that business consulting side rather than that pure advertising side of things.
Mm-hmm. So since you are in the advertising and marketing business,
Mm-hmm.
It's great to hear that you have the consultancy lens, and obviously you've got over 30 years experience as well. Given what we've been witnessing in the last 3 years, we've had COVID and we've just had so many storms. But recently, another huge threat, which in the UK is the cost of living crisis. Maybe not quite the same in Australia, but you definitely have had increased inflation, increased interest rates, meaning that all businesses and in the veterinary industry, they're really, really having to think about their budgets. Things like, staff training and marketing and advertising may take a back seat. But, we still have to think about promoting ourselves and things like brand equity. What's your view on this?
Yeah, so look at it. I'm not going to say it's not there, because obviously, as you mentioned, it's certainly from my understanding, it's worse in the UK indeed than it is here. But it's also, to me, that becomes an opportunity. Now's the time to really entrench your brand equity. I think that the pressures on the veterinary industry over the last 3 years have been the extreme the other way, because there's been the extra number of pets in the marketplace, and therefore been extra busy. So yes, there may be a pullback, but that's also then an opportunity to entrench who you truly are. So the brand equity side of things, I think, does tend to get missed a bit, because the vast majority of clinics essentially are one or two, owned by one or two people over one or two clinics. There's an opportunity there to really get your own brand through and your own positioning within the marketplace. And that's really what I see sort of, as the outcome of what's going on and what's actually happening. Now, there's no question that there's going to be a few issues coming up. I mean, the banks in Australia have just announced that next year, I think it's 30 or 40% of all fixed loans become variable. So the interest rates will obviously make a bigger effect here. But of course, if they're saying 30 to 40%, that means there's 50 or 60% that are already in that situation. So there's a mixed bag out there anyway, and people will be getting more used to how they handle things. So I think a big breath will be well worth taking for starters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then moving forward from there, I mean, brand equity I see as being absolutely crucial to the business moving forward anyway. And it's how you actually portray that into the marketplace, into your clients, into your customer base, and indeed the community.
And I think last time we spoke as well, you told me a story about practices using their brand to potentially attract the right candidates.
Yes.
And even those who have the skill set, because obviously we have this other huge layer, which is another ball to juggle, and that's the global vet shortage.
Yes.
So tell me the story, or give me an example of how branding and marketing makes a difference.
Yeah, a very simple example. A couple of vets close to each other, excuse me, that I know well. One were advertising. Well, they were both advertising for vets. One actually had 18 applicants, and the other one struggled to get 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Truly came down to each vet's positioning and reach within the community, and within the veterinary community itself, of course, but also within the larger community. So when you present yourself, when you present your brand equity, when you put that out there, it's not just about going to your clients, engaging with the customers. It's about engaging with the whole of the community. So that when people are looking, they get a sense from your website, from your engagement, the way you talk, the way you position what you're actually doing. Like, you don't want to actually attract the wrong sort of vet to what you're having. So it's actually a good way of actually getting that across in the first place. Truly believe in who you are and what your brand is, and then that will attract the people that suit your clinic. It goes hand in hand, whether that be patients or indeed staff, be that vets or indeed be that the general staff as well. So there's so much to be gained by that, and there's a tendency within health professionals to sort of hold back onto yourself and say, okay, well, that's who I am, and just put the flag up. But there's nothing wrong with being fully accepting of who you are and how you want to do business, because everyone does it slightly different, and enjoy it, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel brands are so much more than just their products and services, and it's absolutely critical to have a personality, to show the core of what that brand stands for, as you say. Moving on to the next question. We are currently doing an ebook looking into the trends and insights and looking ahead, what's in store for 2023. And the idea is to promote and share best practices, what other clinics are thinking about, what the key challenges are, what the problem solving ideas are, what the solutions are. In your opinion, what do you think is ahead for 2023? What do you feel like practices should be focusing or investing in?
I guess whenever I hear the word invest, I always think yourself. Start at home base, and let's find out how well are you, even from your mental health, from your mental health to your general training, and then everyone within your team. So we're saying investing, making sure the staff are up to scratch. Everyone's saying we're going to have a breather, and perhaps we are, and it is showing signs of that. Well, then that's an ideal time to put all those sort of things in place. So basic processes and practices which have been strained the last few years, now's the time to be able to bring some of those back into place as you want them, or not necessarily back into place, but reinvent yourself towards them.
Yes.
So again, I tend to see it as a positive thing. I know it's a positive time to be able to get yourself back in shape, and then going forward from there. There's no question it'll be a bit scary, but look, there's plenty of old ones around us like myself who saw recessions back in the late 80s and 90s, and then at different times there since. That know that the best time is always now. When it's like this, the best time is to refresh yourself, clarify your brand, and go forward.
Yeah.
Staff training in itself is obviously an ideal time to do that. If you've been stringing them out for so long, then you need a bit of a breather and refresh them.
I mean, in the survey that we produced with 200 participants, that was absolutely one of the biggest priorities, was staff training, because it too, it was chaotic in the pandemic and the lockdowns, and all they had to focus on was seeing to customers. And, we had the exponential demand because so many millions of new pets were acquired, and the demand was ridiculous.
Yes.
And so I guess veterinary professionals barely had a chance to breathe and see to themselves. I think practices and clinics are really keen on refocusing those efforts, getting their CPD levels back up, doing more training, and that has absolutely been evident in our survey. And just showing staff that you value them. We spoke a lot about personal reviews and professional development, and how important that is to create an open line of communication, so that there's this two-way feedback between employee and employer, and people always have the chance to speak up, talk about their career aspirations, talk about their mental health, and get the guidance or the mentorship that they may need. And at the end of the day, in the global veterinary shortage, the thing that you want to have is high staff retention and lower attrition rates, right? Do you think that there's, outside of training and mental health, do you think there's anything else?
Well, I mean,
practices need to be looking at?
A veterinary practice, like in all medical practices, you're not selling cornflakes. So it's about engaging. You have a client base, which is actually a community. As a vet, you're a leader within that community in relation to what is a family member. So don't drop off that community connection. That's critical to the clients as it is to you for future business. It's critical to them to know there's somebody there within their bigger family, if you like. I always talk about teams that you should have as a business owner. You should have a team that you can chat with, be that other vets, be that your accountant or your marketing person, or your legal person and so forth. You've got to build a team around you. And again, this is when you build those rebuild those relationships. Being a vet can be very isolated at times. And with having a bit of a breather, now's the time you can actually build that. So the investment, as well as an investment in community, and investment in relationships, because that's what helps the business down the track. Which again is portraying your brand at the same time. So there's a wider aspect. And what I'm trying to focus on here is just not spending dollars. I mean, from our perspective, yes, we would refer to not necessarily flash advertising, but actually engagement to the client, and making sure everyone's on board and you go along the journey together. So you're speaking to a bigger community. But it's not about spending big dollars. I'm not, as much as an advertising guy, perhaps I should say that, but no, it's about engaging properly and building your healthy team.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I get why you're explaining that, though, because that's where someone's mind goes to when you think about advertising. You just think
Yeah,
flashing dollar signs, but
that's right.
that's not the case at all. So this is probably a nice segue into thinking up questions 1 and 2. We've spoken briefly about things like private healthcare. Obviously, in the UK, we have the NHS for humans, but there's not an NHS for cats and dogs. There's not an NHS for pets.
Yeah.
In Australia, I don't know what the situation is like, but in terms of passing on, we're talking about budgeting, we're talking about the cost of living crisis, inflation, and interest rates. Creating a communication and connection with the community, passing on affordable healthcare for your pets. What's your view on that?
Well, you mentioned that there is no NHS. You're quite right in that sense. But the private health insurance cover that's come through within the veterinary world for the last probably 10 years now, but it's really grown very, very well. And previously, I was involved in the design and build of clinics, and of course, you need to be able to put together a good business plan and so forth. And one main thing that I was watched would happen was that as more and more clinics had more and more patients or pets that were on the private health schemes, it then gave a weight of substance to the financiers to be able to say, okay, well, if you've got that many patients on there, then you're going to be able to they'll be covering their costs when they come through, so therefore they're far more likely to look after their patients. So it actually gave them a stronger business case to therefore build the better and or bigger clinic, which in turn then they were able to run as a better business. So those kind of things actually help exceptionally well to build the surety within yourself. The business is going to go along okay. If you like the sustainability word, it comes in there from a sustainable business perspective. But it helps you again bring in the other team, the finance team, to reassure you on what's actually happening. So again, it makes it easier to sleep at night if you've got that confidence that you've got that many patients coming through down the track.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So do you have any final thoughts or top tips that you want to impart your wisdom, being in that consultant mindset? Any tips you want to give to our listeners ahead of the seasonal holidays and in preparation for next year?
Yeah, and get some time to do a bit of reading. I guess reiterating some of the points I was just saying. We talked about this briefly. Just 3 main points. The first one I put down there is about understanding yourself, and therefore, I suppose the simplest way for you to understand yourself is picking up on Simon Sinek's know your why. So you know your why you're there, know what you're doing, and know how you're doing it. You got those things in place, you can then portray it back down through nicely within your business. And it's a good little process to go through. Engage with clients and your community. As I say, you're a leader. You're a leader for the community. People look up to you. They really do trust what you're saying. They really want to know more. Engage with them and bring them along with you so that they know they've got an arm to rest on. And then engage with your team. Now, your team is the people around you, but it's also other vets in the same town, maybe in other towns. Just join groups. And the vets are very good, I know, at the conferences and things, but do it more locally as well.
Yeah.
Industry suppliers. You've got a whole body of people around you, industry suppliers, you've got service providers like ourselves, and legal accountants and so forth. They all want the best for you. Utilize your team. Have a chat with them. They won't charge you. Have a chat and find things out, understand what they're trying to achieve and how it can work together with your clinic. So that bigger team. Sit down tonight or whenever you listen to this, not if you're driving, make a list of who that bigger team is, who you'd like to have a chat with and a coffee with. Because more and more people are very happy to do so because it works for everyone. It's just working together. I'm obviously talking from a marketing, communication, engagement perspective. There are good companies within the industry that understand that engaging a vet with the community is not the same as selling cornflakes. Find that professional. Find that professional in the finance area. Find that professional in the supplier area and so forth, because they'll work with you much better.
Yeah, solid advice. Well, thanks Ian, for your time. We're keeping it short and sweet today, but our listeners will definitely find this useful, I believe. So yeah, I hope you have a good evening, and I'm sure we'll talk very soon.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ian.
thank you. Thanks very much.
I think my favorite thing about this conversation is how Ian gently reminds us not to forget the basics and all the foundations. So when you're running a business, it's easy to kind of focus on the operational things, but forget things like building your network, looking at the community, and strengthening your professional and personal relationships. And one of my favorite quotes, I guess, or something that he said makes total sense, because when we are taking a breather and we're just taking a step back from after the pandemic, after the cost of living crisis, just so many storms, but we take a breather, we take a step back. He reminds us to look at the basic processes and practice, because when you're taking a breather, it's an ideal time for putting these things back into place. And where it has been strained before in the last few years, this is a good time to refresh, reinvent, and revitalize yourself. It's a great time for you to get your practice back into shape. And that's what he says, that is what he talks about. So I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. And as always, it's a good idea to have an open mind, to have the growth mindset, and to learn from experts in the space who have been in it for a long time, and even if they haven't, just getting an outsider's point of view. Happy holidays. We hope you have a great time, whatever you may be celebrating and wherever you are celebrating. You will likely hear from us in the next few weeks with an ebook that will also help you prepare for 2023. Watch this space.